You know, that was but it was not in the report. So it went over the line or whatever, printed out all that thing. That was one of the questions. Did you copy that? That's simple to read in that one. Well, I got it from here.
This is the addendum.
I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you.
What you got?
That's what I was saying.
Sure, I'll take one. Thank you.
They have one.
And the other condition is that the part that we,
Thank you.
what do you got? The city will let us R, so that way you guys never have to go. See what it takes. Like that is swimming pool. We don't get the weird position where we ask the city commission to ask for zoning.
We're live. We're live.
Good evening. We're going to call our meeting to order. Just like to welcome you to our council meeting tonight, and I would ask, please, if you have cell phones, to please turn them off at this time.
Put these lights on.
What? David says they're burned out.
We will stand and have pledge of allegiance by Mayor Pro Tem Blanton and prayer by Councilmember Reed.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you would like to pray with us, would you please remain standing? Dear God of us all, we thank you for this day, a day that you have made, a day that we shall all rejoice and be glad in. Thank you for mercy, grace, and favor on this day. Would you please bless the agenda that has been set before us so we can make sound decisions for the city of Madison. Amen.
Amen. Approval, all our council members are present tonight. Approval of minutes of our previous meeting, our call meeting of March 28, 2022, our regular meeting of April 11th, 2022, our call meeting of April 21st, 2022, and our call meeting of April 22nd, 2022. You had a chance to read those minutes prior to our meeting. If we can get a motion and a second to approve those minutes, please.
So moved.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposes? None. Let the vote unanimously. Thank you. Are there anything that need to be added to our agenda for tonight? Our consent agenda item on our consent agenda that we talked about in our work session that was put on our consent agenda for tonight. Here is tourism grants, Madison Morgan Cultural Center, Morgan County Historic Society, and Morgan County African American Museum. We talked about this at our work session as well. We could get a motion and a second to approve the items on our consent agenda. And also contract Peak Steel Builders, Bull Street parking lot. Change order number 5 and 6.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to accept the consent agenda consisting of the Heritage Tourism Grants and the change to the Peak Steel building contract.
Second.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposes? None. The vote unanimously. First thing on our agenda tonight is a public hearing, condition is use 2551 Eaton Road, Suite 1, tax parcel 046B049, to allow a medical office and a professional office park. Bryce?
Thank you, sir. Good evening. Given the brevity and clarity of this request, I have decided to spare you all from overdose of PowerPoint and just to give you a quick verbal report. The location is at 2151 Eaton Road, Building I. The applicant is looking to put a podiatrist office in there, which is a medical office, and those are a conditional use in an office park. A brief explanation as to the rules. It was adopted this way in 2014 when we amended the regulations on office parks and shopping centers, specifically for a pure office park, which is what this is. You will be in a position where medical processes sometimes have things like medical waste, heavy MRI machinery. Various things can be a little off-putting to your more traditional professional uses, which is why it's a conditional use. If those are present, they can be addressed. In the case of this applicant, that's not the case. They very limited little medical waste, no lab tests running ongoing, no heavy medical machinery like MRIs. So similar requests that the mayor and council have considered in the past have been approved for a dentist office and an optometrist, and were approved without any concerns. They're using the existing building, the existing space. There's already parking allocated for everything there, so it's fairly straightforward. The Planning Commission gave this unanimous recommendation after a very, very short discussion. So that's everything in a nutshell.
Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you, sir.
Our public hearing is now open. Is there anyone here to speak against this zoning request? Are there anyone here to speak for this request? If not, it's back to our council for discussion or vote of approval. Public hearing is closed.
Mr. Mayor, I had a question about the condition that the planning department put there. The expiration of the conditional use after 12 months after a use change. Is that standard terminology? I'm a little vague on what that really means. Could you give me sort of a...
Yes, sir. May I?
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Staff put that as a recommend conditioned because the thing with conditional uses, if we don't put an expiration in and the use leaves, then we have the weird question of someone 3 years down the road if it's permitted or not. And it's as limited to, that's why we put those sunset clauses in there. In the past, we haven't, and that means, like one example, I had to go back to 2010, 12 years down the road to see if there was a conditional use when someone asked about something that's normal conditional use. And as it's linked to the use, they can keep a medical office there with the same basic practice pattern. They can add partners, they can change ownership, all that's fine. It doesn't affect them in that way. They can sell to another podiatrist. You get the idea. So it keeps all that straightforward, but it does clear it out after 12 months of ceasing of use. So it still lets the space be reused again later within a reasonable time frame.
And the 12 months is just something an arbitrary number that we've kind of gotten used to using?
Yes, sir. Many of our expirations tend to run on the 12-month pattern. It's just an easy run a calendar year. You don't have to do much calculation, and it does give enough wiggle time that if a landlord, if they moved out or sold it or however, 6 months down the road, someone else could go in without us having to go through this whole process again.
Thanks, Boris. Are there any more questions from the council? If not, if we could get a motion and a second to approve this conditional use.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Yes, sir.
I move that we approval of the conditional use of medical office in the professional office park for 046B 049 215 building number, Eatonton Road, based on the application, public hearing, and discussion, and considering applicant standards with the following conditions: expiration of the conditional use after 12 months of use.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Public hearing, rezone Greg Bayard is requesting a rezone from estate residential R to planned residential district PRD for a portion of tax parcel 036E 008 fronting Carmichael Road. All right.
The property in question is currently zoned estate residential, which is, you can see, is outlined here in purple. It is a portion of the tax parcel 036E008 fronting Carmichael Road. The applicant is making a request for changing this area to planned residential district. This is a site plan showing the layout. Of note, and this is the orientation has changed, so north is no longer the top for the members of the public watching, north is to the west. You can see Carmichael Road is on the left side of the screen, sorry. Carmichael Road is shown on the left side of the screen, that's north relatively speaking. You'll notice there's a 4-acre area designated for a park. This property is intended to be, if approved, this request is approved, it would be donated to the city for an additional neighborhood park. And it would belong to the city after that. The remaining 11 acres would be left for the multifamily development. Here's an aerial photo of the area. It is currently undeveloped. They are planning on their 60 units. They're going to have 8 one-bedroom units, 32 two-bedroom units, and 20 three-bedroom units. They've got a wide range of your fairly typical amenities and accessory uses we would like to see in these. I will note that part of they're definitely having an on-site management, so that is something that we require in our ordinances, and they already have included a wide range of other options. So just kind of skimming on that there. The architectural style is a mix of brick and siding. Here are some pictures. These are some pictures from a project that the WODA Group has done earlier elsewhere, I believe Pooler, Georgia. They're going to use the same architectural firm, but this is sort of what they're looking at doing here. I'll go back one if you guys want. That's all right. And going on. So that's what we're looking at seeing put in. The character area is the traditional residential category, traditional neighborhood residential, modern subdivision. And what this means is that it does allow a few things. Recommended zones include planned residential districts, PRDs. They also include multifamily. I will also note, since we're talking about comprehensive plan and other plans, the green print intends to try to get everyone to have walking distance of a neighborhood park. This part of town is further distance than most areas of our town from a park. And this land would actually help this part of the town out meet that goal. So this is another plan point it advances, even though it's not directly related to the comprehensive plan. The other aspect is this is what's called a low-income housing tax credit, LIHTC. Now these projects, you folks have seen 2 of these before, Canaan Crossing and Silver Lakes. This one is more in line with Canaan Crossing, as it's not limited to 55 and over. For just a brief review, the rate of rent is determined, you qualify by being in the 40 to 60% of the annual median income, which is determined by the Department of Housing, Housing and Urban Development, HUD. So right now in 2020 it was around $64,000. This number fluctuates a bit depending on household size, but that sort of gives you a spitball measurement. The various rates for the apartments are here. You have those in your handouts, but just a few highlights I'll point out. A 1-bedroom will be $530 at the 50% restriction rate. I will point out that 6 of these units, 10%, are what they call market rate. This means they are not strictly limited to the calculations, but the applicants can explain they generally try to keep those within relatively the same bounds. As part of the process of applying for this grant, which is a program, grant tax credit they get, they have to go through the state, and one of the things is the Housing Opportunity Commission is allowed to give, or the GIC team, which is part of that, Georgia Initiative for Community Housing. I'm going to try to keep my alphabet soup to a minimum, everybody, but it's unavoidable here. Is allowed to give 1-point recommendation on a project, and whoever gets those points will get their projects approved. Not all projects are approved. So this has been vetted by the Housing Opportunity Commission, and they gave it their 1 point they could grant. They're only allowed to give it out once. So just keep that in mind. We have that recommendation from that board as well. Part of any sort of planned residential development is that we need to look at sort of the pros and cons, the benefits to both sides. I will say very briefly here that this particular plan meets every aspect of our zoning in terms of if they could request a rezone to a area that will allow multifamily, except for the number of units, which they are exceeding in terms of number. The density of this development, however, is the same as our current minimum requirement. 15 acres would generate 60. So in theory, if this was rezoned R4 and someone came in and built single-family homes, they could get 60 homes in there potentially. So that's the benefit they get, is the extra number of units. The city gets two major benefits. One, as I mentioned, the 4-acre park, and the LITHC housing is a way we can provide workforce housing, because you have to be employed, but it also lets people who are, have options and can afford it. To the demand for this particular housing and its price range, Canaan, while it has not opened, is no longer accepting applications. They're finished with a waiting list. Silver Lakes has been operating at full occupancy, even though they're 55 and over, a little different category in terms of tenants. But both of those have been tremendously in high demand. And our comprehensive plan talks about, in the housing section, providing affordable and efficient housing and workforce housing. So this also advances that point. So just to be clear, this is about as minimum as we could get for a planned residential district without, not being able to need to grant one. The Planning Commission, after some discussions, recommended approval 3-0 with 2 abstentions. There are 3 conditions, and this springs off your comment earlier about deadlines. These deadlines are a little different because they have to apply for a grant program, and they have to wait to hear back from that and a few others. I have discussed this with one of the applicants, Mr. Bayer. He says these timelines are acceptable. So the city approval of the development agreement, including the future parkland, within 12 months of the rezone. I did make one suggestion, if rezoned, that we pursue it this way, is that the area of the future park will retain its R zoning and not be rezoned PRD. The reason is this: if these folks ever need to amend their PRD, change the site plan a little, let's say they wanted to add a swimming pool, which would require an amendment, they'd have to get the city permission if we were in the same PRD, and then you folks would hear something that we gave them permission to ask for. It's a legal pickle I don't want to deal with, so I would just suggest in that case we keep the park portion zoned as R. The last one that the Planning Commission, and they supported all of these in the recommendation, is that the PRD will expire within 3 years of approval if building permits are not obtained, and 4 years if work has not begun, and then it'll revert back to the estate residential district. The reason I'm suggesting these timeframes, it will let them have time to finish their grant and finish the design review process. It's not in the Corridor Historic Preservation Commission, but we still have to check for building code and zoning compliance. But we've had in the past, if you folks may recall, where, I'm going to butcher the name, but Wellbridge is now, we had a planned professional district that did not have one of these timeout components, and we were wondering what the heck we were going to do with this 15 years down the road. Fortunately, someone came and redeveloped it, but we're trying to make sure that we don't end up in that sort of situation. So that's pretty much the gist of this. One other element, which is not strictly related to zoning, but I think the applicant would like you to know, per their other 2 developments, this will be the 3rd one, the old development with the LEED, which is an environmental standard for the development to increase their energy efficiency and minimize their impact. So, any questions?
Bryce, remind me the capacity at Canaan Crossing?
Canaan Crossing is 60 units.
60?
Yes, ma'am.
As well.
So how did, if I may ask, how did that, since we have in our zoning ordinance a 32-unit limit, how did that come about?
Well, initially, I think Canaan was different kind of situation. There were several other players involved, Downtown Development Authority, as well as I believe it was initially started partially under county jurisdiction. It's a little bit of a different animal. So this one is entirely in the city and is entirely a question for you folks to deal with.
Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you, sir.
Our public hearing is now open. Are there anyone here to speak against this zoning change? Zoning hearing? Is there anyone here to speak for this zoning?
Mayor and Council, my name is Denny Blackburn with Woda Cooper Companies. I would like just to say a few words that we, is that working? So, I'll speak a little louder than it. We just like to say that we are very excited about this opportunity. Bryce does an excellent presentation, so there's not much more for me to add to his specific presentation, except that I would say that this is a competitive application process in the state of Georgia. We're going after what's referred to as federal taxes, federal affordable housing tax credits, which unfortunately they refer to them as LIHTC, which is low-income housing tax credits. But in fact, this is genuinely workforce housing. This is associated not only with federal tax credit, there's also a Georgia state tax credit that goes with it. And that's the reason why it enables us to provide a quality development, which is exactly the same as any market rate development would be done today. I mean, the total budget we have at the moment is about $15.9 million for this particular development. But it's then restricted to people who earn up to a certain, the area medium income that Bryce referred to, and that's why those rents are able to be kept at a very, very affordable rate, which enables a great workforce housing. One last comment I would say, I'm here with Greg Bayard. Of course, you've met several times before as well. Greg and I are very committed to the Lead for Homes program, and this would be another part we would absolutely make sure this would be a lead development, meaning that there are huge energy savings that are created versus a normal traditional development, which don't go to the developer, but actually go to the residents themselves, as they would be paying, the water and sewer rates, electricity rates, and at a much lower rate. And of course, I'm here to answer any other question that you may have.
Are there any questions for Mr. Blackburn?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I did have one question. I understand there's a commitment on Woda's part, and I will say Woda's got a great track record with us here in Madison, both at Silver Lakes and at Canaan Crossing. Where in this, is it in the development agreement that the commitment to have a certain percentage, the low-income rent supported? Where is that commitment?
It's actually in our commitment to the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. We have the breakdown of all these units of how many will be affordable, and that will end up in the LURC, which is the land. What Greg said, the land use restrictive covenant. So it'll be in there, and it'll be in there for 30 years.
Okay, so, and I believe, am I right, it's 40% the commitment at this point to be subject to that rent support? 40% of the units?
No, there will be 54 of the units, of the 60 units will be.
Oh, really?
54 of the units will be committed to that. 12 will be at 50%, 42 at 60%. And then we have 10%, 6 of the units will be market rate units. And as Bryce says, we refer to as market rate units. What that really means is that there's not an income restriction analysis that needs to be done. That doesn't mean that we're going to jack up the prices on some units. It just provides that there's no actual income restriction that's required. And
Well, that's really good to hear, because that component of this proposal
Right,
really
yeah.
makes this more attractive to me as a council member.
Right.
One thing I did want to kind of make sure we all understand is your commitment is to grant the city the 4 acres for the city park,
Correct.
but you're not doing anything to make that park. That's the city and our taxes and our citizens' tax money will be doing that.
We're buying the land, sir, with
Okay.
our money,
All right.
and we are dedicating it back to the city.
Just wanted to make sure everyone understood you weren't putting in the bench.
We are putting the road in that will go in from Carmichael. It'll go to our.
That was kind of my next question. That's your
Yeah.
expense, that
That's-
new
that's-
road off
that
of
we put the
Carmichael?
road in. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
I would like to just say thank you. Thank you for Silver Lakes. Thank you for Canaan Crossing. Thank you for even considering the city of Madison to come to and to do what you're doing. So my only comment is thank you and just thanks. We really appreciate everything. We really need workforce housing in our community, and you're bringing it, and it's nice looking, clean. In the 30 years, you always put in that you're going to keep it up, so thank
Right,
you.
Right, and I think as Bryce said, we not only do we have an actual property manager
Yes.
on site, which
On
actually we
site.
refer to them as community managers, because
Yes.
it's not just the bricks and mortar, it's actually managing the people, making sure they feel very welcome. We will have a service technician as well, which will be an on-site person to handle the maintenance.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Reed. And to echo what Councilman Reed said, I think it all began with Silver Lakes, and you did such a wonderful job there. Moving over to Canaan Cross, and now looking at Carmichael. So
Yep.
we thank you for looking at our cities and the need in our city. So we thank you so much. Good work.
Thank you.
Would you mind signing in, sir?
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Sure.
I kind of echo the previous comments, but because I have been very involved in the two other projects that have been done. And it's really important to emphasize that this is affordable rent. A lot of people, and you mentioned it, but a lot of people misunderstand that. This is meant, you did say, this is built to market rates. In other words, you're not cutting any corners, you're not doing anything. You're getting the tax credits off the rent, correct?
Yep, correct.
So everything is built to market standards, which is just the same way that Canaan was done. I also really do like your layout and your plan from the way that you basically have it clustered back off the road.
Correct.
I don't see any real impact within the neighborhood as far as just looking out and seeing a whole bunch of
Right.
other houses. I like that 4-acre park in the front. Again, I think you've done a really great job of planning, and we are continuing with the same concepts that you will maintain this for 30 years, right?
Correct, yes, sir.
And at the end of 30 years, you may sell it or do whatever you want, correct?
The company may do something, probably not me, sir.
Well,
It's,
I don't think I'll be here either, but those are really great
Right.
things
They
that you offer.
Yes.
And the fact is, just a little update in my mind, are you required to do, like after 15 years, do a renovation?
I was just going to say, the way the program works, and the program was, I think it was a very smart way of putting in a program to help boost affordable housing in the country, is it was put under the Reagan area in the mid-1980s. They made one mistake. They called it the low-income housing tax credit, which is just not the right thing. But it is actually a genuine tax credit, a federal tax credit that is given to each state, and then each state allocates the actual credits out on a competitive allocation process. That process lasts for 15 years. The first compliance period is for 15 years, and then we commit to a second commitment period. But we are eligible to actually reapply for tax credits after the first 15 years are up. Now, as Woda Cooper Companies, we've got a portfolio of close to 400 different properties. And some of those are now, we've been in existence 33 years, so some of those properties have gone through a sort of a reapplication for tax credits. Unfortunately, it's not after year 15 because we look after our properties so well that when we actually do get to 15, there's not much to actually renovate. But when they do get to 19, 20, 22 type of thing, that's the time when we would actually reapply for tax credits and definitely maintain them. Furthermore, I would like to say the whole program was well structured because it makes sure there's so many people that make sure this actually is well managed and well operated. We have to, right up front, put a huge reserve, actual capital reserve for any maintenance that goes forward on a per unit basis. So there's always amount of specific money available.
Just one last question. Is there anything else that we can do for you to help increase that score? Because it's very important that we know it's
Right.
competitive,
Yeah.
and there are things that you put in there and that
Right.
will help you. And that's probably another reason for having that 3 years, because
Right.
it doesn't get approved
Right.
this coming time.
Right.
You'll still have it out
Right.
for the next time.
Right.
I think you've been very, I mean, if this gets, approved tonight, you've been very, very generous, and we've loved working with the city. If it doesn't get approved, I'm sure that Greg, myself, Bryce, and Monica will sit down to see how we can't mine some extra points for a future application.
We'll
in the
help you
case
mind
in the case.
because this is
Right.
what you're doing is
Yeah.
we really need,
Yeah,
and we
right.
appreciate it. That's all, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, thank you. Are there any more questions, Mr. Blackman? If not, are there any more comments speaking for this? Monica?
Yes, sir. I'm just going to say that y'all all know that when we're doing a community development project, my role is to step out of the review process. So Bryce prepares his staff report. I haven't seen it. It goes to David if he's going to need assistance, and I don't provide assistance when I'm working for the GIC team or the Downtown Development Authority. Lets me wear a couple of hats. So I wanted to say that there are a couple of things that the GIC team specifically endorsed and requested, and that WODA was responsive to that. This is the type of developer we want to see, is one that is responsive to community requests. So I wanted to itemize what those GIC team requests were. One is they decided what they wanted was something that was family-oriented this time, not senior-oriented. And WODA adapted their proposal to that. Two, they asked for something that was mixed income. Many of them had been on a visit, a field trip to Macon, and seen a mixed income neighborhood, and they wanted to see that instead of be all low income or all moderate income. They wanted to see a mixed one. So WODA responded to that. When told that in order to get the number of units on the site that they wanted, and we explained that a 1/4 acre is our minimum requirement per unit, WODA attached more land to their development to make sure that they were meeting the minimums in our ordinance. And when they were told that they were had to do a PRD and they were looking at a community benefits test, we can't tell them, because that would be an extraction, what we want. But what we can do is suggest things that we need or things that other community planning components have discussed. And one of those is land banking for a future park in that area. Because as Bryce noted, you have to be within a certain distance of a neighborhood park. So this would meet that need as well. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that the things that make it more competitive are the letters that go with. So the GIC team has endorsed this project, did award its GIC point. They will get a point for being endorsed by the GIC community. If you find this an acceptable application and you do approve it tonight, staff also requests that you write a letter or authorize the mayor to endorse the letter as this is the picked project. And the reason that is because there can be multiple projects that come from a community. And so we could have 3 or 4 people in here rezoning. We did have 2 or 3 people put in requests looking for a competitive project in this area. There may be a future day when we have multiple people standing before us, but tonight it's WODA. But either way, if you find it acceptable and you pass the zoning, then staff would request that you go ahead and authorize the mayor to write the letter of support as the community's chosen project. That will also assist their application. And if you have any questions for me on behalf of the GIC team, I'm happy to answer those.
I think, just like to thank Councilmember Reed, she works on the GIC team, I believe, don't she serves on the GIC
She does give us some ad hoc advice.
For advice, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Are there no more questions for Monica? Does anyone else want to speak for? If not, it's back to our council for approval or denial.
Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
I would like to make a motion to approve. Let me get my wording right, Mr. Mayor. To approve to a planned residential district for portion tax parcel 036E008 fronting Carmichael Road.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
You doing the conditions?
is it appropriate to add,
Do I
to have
need
the
to
mayor
add all
write
the
that letter?
Or is that a second?
Oh, well, we can add it. Is there a second already?
for a second motion, or one whole motion, including the letter?
Do we need to make one whole motion, Ashley, including the letter? Bryce, were you going to say something?
Sir, may I? If I may, Ms. Reed, I would also make a note to put sure that, to include those conditions or not. I just didn't know if you wanted to put them in there. Your motion did not include them, if I heard correctly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Let me restate my motion. I would like to make a motion to change, to rezone from estate residential planning to a PRD, which is a planned residential district, to include the following conditions. City approval of a development agreement including a future park, land being added to the deeded city within 12 months of approval of the request, the area of the future park will retain its estate residential district R, meaning 11 acres will be zoned planned residential district. The PRD will expire 3 years of approval if building permits are not obtained within 4 years if work has not begun. Otherwise, the property will be zoned PRD will revert back to estate plan residential. And that is tax partial 036E008 fronting Carmichael Road.
Mr. Munson, can I get a second?
So moved.
Are there any more discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I could just make a comment. I do intend to support this, but I wanted to make it clear that I don't want to minimize what we're doing here in terms of changing a zoning of large lot residential to a much denser unit. I think the benefits are so overwhelming that that trend kind of gives me concern. A lot of growth all at one time. But the benefits for the really dire need for workforce housing in this community, I think kind of overwhelm that. It's well located, I think, within our city limits. I think it's really important that we find a way, and this might help in that direction, to find a way for housing for our teachers, our police officers, our hospital workers. But I just want you to know, I don't go into this lightly. It's concerning anytime we increase density like that. And also, since this is part of a much larger 120 acres, I don't want to give anyone the indication that what we did in this particular motion tonight has any implications for the rest of that property. Access and everything else is totally different, so I wouldn't want the owners to think this could be a model we can continue in any part of the other 120 acres. Just wanted to make that clear, but I do intend to support this.
Thank you, Councilmember Joyce.
And are we supporting the letter with the mayor to sign in that motion as well?
The motion was with the letter for the mayor to sign. I just want to say thank you again to Woda Cooper for what you're doing in our city. Eric was talking about housing for teachers. You also said this was not just for low income. You said some of it will be market rate. Am I correct? Yes. Okay. So that means it'll be a mixed use development. Am I correct? Okay, my motion stands.
Thank you so much. We got a second, I believe, didn't we? All in favor, show of hands. Opposed is none. The vote unanimously. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
do we
sir.
need did that include the motion for you to write
It
a letter?
did.
It did.
Okay, I just wanted clarification. Thank you.
City of Madison District map, boundary change, review and discussion. Bryce? City of Madison, city map.
Boundary change.
Oh, yes, I mean, yes, ma'am. All right. Okay, just want to set up here. What do you need, the voting district map? That's what I can check. It's all right. I did both either way, so it's still my problems, they'd say.
I'll find it.
All right.
You can just start.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Mayor, Mr. Mayor, I was tasked with updating our voting districts to incorporate the 2022 decennial census data into it. You should have a copy of this in front of you, and I'm just going to briefly sort of go through. District 1 had a small change in its boundary, and it's an adjustment between District 1 and 2, in which basically the point you have between Washington and Jefferson, that strip going to Main Street was originally in District 3, or District 1. It's been moved to District 2 to keep their numbers right, both sides right. That's the only two changes in District 1 and District 2. District 3, no change. Exactly as the boundaries currently are. Very straightforward on that one. Districts 4 and 5 are where we have the most changes, and this is largely due thanks to the Census Bureau for changing what they call the blocks, the small areas. You can see here on the map, it's where you see the numbers. It's the individual blocks usually divided by roads, streams, or railroads, occasionally utility lines. Periodically, every 10 years, they like to rearrange these, and that's why we have to adjust here. You'll may notice on the former or current boundaries, the dashed yellow and blue line sort of running down Michael Way. That used to be the dividing line. They merged that tract, so it's now 502 with 31 getting stuck in there, and that, by the way, is most of a district. Our ideal district size is 890 people. So that's most of the district by itself. That was kept with District 5. That's why District 5 extends that far down. District 4 had to have some adjustments to accommodate that because part of its area was now drawn in different blocks. So that's why basically Beacon Heights area has some changes, but that's again due to the fact the way the U.S. Census Bureau happened to draw our data. But that's the only real big change on it. This is about as minimum change as I can make it. So just let me know if you have any questions. And very briefly, I'll point out that we're able to keep all districts within no more than a 2% off the 890 amount. So it's about as close as I can get this, I think.
Thank you, Brian. I believe all the councilmen had a chance to look at that district and the maps previously. They was all pretty much satisfied, I believe, Bryce.
Okay.
Great job.
Well, if there are no questions, I will step on down.
Okay. Are there any more questions concerning our map, our district map?
Mr. Mayor, have you received any public comment on these changes?
I have not. I did talk with the president of the NAACP, and he looked at the map and he was very pleased with that.
I've received no comment.
And just a quick note on the process. I believe this is our first public hearing. We have one.
Right, we have another one.
One more,
Right.
and is the ad going in the paper? I believe, wasn't that a requirement?
Yes, it has to go in the paper 3 consecutive weeks before the final adoption. And then,
Thank you, Bryce. David, City of Madison,
Mr. Mayor.
boundary change, City of Madison, I'm sorry. Sure, who have a question?
Mr. Mayor, this is a public hearing, so we have to have a public hearing for comments.
Public
on
hearing
this.
is open. Anyone here to speak against this map, boundaries change? Anyone here to speak for it? Public hearing is closed, and we'll wait to our next public hearing. Thank you. Animal control, ordinance.
Yes, Mayor.
Proceed.
I'm here before you today as me and Philip received a complaint about some sheep over on Dixie Avenue. And it came to our attention that we have a large acreage exception in our ordinance that gives no restrictions on any property larger than 10 acres. So I come here today asking that we change the 10 acres to 20 acres. So that way if you have 20 acres in the city, you're allowed to have as many livestock as you would like, but anything less, then you're held to the ordinance of on lots of 1 1/2 to, which it reads 10 acres, you get 1 horse, 1 pony, 1 donkey, sheep, goat, or mule per fenced pasture acre of land. That's,
Can I ask a quick question of Philip, if you have comments? Because I think the thing to consider, this is the animal control ordinance, or is this the zoning
animal
ordinance?
control.
There are provisions in zoning. I think they're very, very broad. And that's not before us. I think they're doing what they ask us to do. This is animal control. And you also have state ordinances. You have state provisions on keeping of animals. So we're not getting into that. We go by that and use as a guide, but we can't change it. We can enforce it. The only change in this is the 20 acres from 10 acres on A under 1473?
Yes,
Is that correct? Okay. And the issue that has been brought to us, the 10 acres and over, the 11-acre parcel, the reason that it is an issue is that they are over 10 acres. They didn't have to have the pasture of so much of the fence, 1 acre per animal. Is that correct? Okay, that's correct. My only concern is that D is still in the ordinance at all. What's the thinking behind that? Because could you not drive a truck through that if someone wanted to put in something a lot more intensive than, or do we have a backstop against that?
Well, how it looked at was, we have a lot of large lots in the city. Like you have Pennington that has 79 acres. There's a lot of people with a lot of acreage that may want to have livestock, and including the Safari off 83, they have 286. So I was just gonna do
Right. My question is there are accepted units of acreage or accepted practices for keeping of animals on pasture. Okay,
Yes.
1 acre. I mean one head of livestock per acre
Yes,
is
sir.
pretty much the minimum,
Yes.
or the maximum carrying capacity. So I think it's a great improvement. I think but it kicks it up, and this has never come up before, and we've always been able to deal with it because keeping of livestock or farm animals has crept up in other areas, usually on small lots, and this has always worked effectively. So I guess it's worth trying it and see this 20-acre exception, if it works.
If I may speak, Council.
Yes, sir.
I first got involved in this April 11th of this year, over on Dixie Avenue. We had some complaints from the neighboring properties about, they were about the odor and about, this is a pretty dense area. We have this 11-acre property here, and under the ordinance, it talks about 10 acres, there's no restriction. I personally would like to see that be taken out completely, that it be based upon the animals, and not have any size land and restrictions, is what my recommendation is. Because we got other lots in the city that are more bigger than 20 acres, and what are we gonna run into in the future? If somebody wants to bring in 100 sheep or whatever, I just think that we need to think about the future here.
I think too that I don't think this is ready yet. I don't. I think it's a difficult, because you can't think of all the scenarios and you want to do different things. But the 20-acre exception, you could have a large lot, but when you get through the exception, a person could keep 10 head of cattle on 1 acre.
Yes.
And jam it right up against somebody else's property.
Yes, sir.
And that is unacceptable anywhere, but more especially in the city. So I think we have some issues with keeping of animals of any acreage in a residential area that we've not dealt with yet. And my neighbor to my left is ready to because we're dealing with a specific issue that, and I've talked to people and I've had conversations, it's what we do in Madison, we talk about things, and whether it has or has not the specific situation, whether it's risen to the point of being a nuisance yet. That's I think where we're at.
And that is exactly where we're at.
But I'd like to work on this some more. I really would. I appreciate the work that's gone into it, but I don't think jacking the acreage up. And my apologies for not looking at this ahead of time. That's my failure. I don't want to waste y'all's time. But I think this is important enough to try to deal with specifics on keeping of animals, because I think one of the issues in this one is they got 11 acres, but they're not using a quarter of an acre as the paddock.
As the holding.
As the holding area.
As these sheep are combined in a pretty small area, fenced area.
And D allows that. So it doesn't say anything about fenced acreage, and that's the exception.
But
that needs to be fixed.
10 acres has no exception. Exemption.
Right.
And as code enforcement and animal control, that really limits our ability to address these issues, because they get around this. And I try to put myself in that situation. I don't want to live right beside someone who's got a bunch of sheep right beside my property, and I have to smell it every day.
Ooh.
But yet, you got to be fair to everybody. I think that my recommendation is that exception be taken out, and it be based per fenced acreage. Because I think we can better manage this in the future. Because if we leave this in there, I think it's going to come back and be a problem in the future.
So, David, will we need to get legal counsel on this as well?
Well, I think it never hurts for him to review it, but these are practical applications. These are practical things that we are still agricultural. I mean, within 20 minutes walk, I can be where I don't see the town anymore. I mean, you can be out in the middle of a cotton field or petting horses or whatever, and we want it to stay that way. But this provision, I mean, this situation, and that's a strong word for it, because I'm not so sure it's created all that big of a problem yet. I don't know that, but it remains to be seen. But I think when I saw the 10-acre exception, and then I saw the fact that you didn't have to have, I thought there probably should have been a rule that said you had to have so many acres of fenced, you had to have so much area fenced before, per animal, and that would take care of it. And I think if we get that in there and we work it out, but I think we need one more stab at it.
Do you think it'll be ready for our next?
Yeah, I think we should have something ready for the next work session to talk about it some more and get it closer. And I want to say in the strongest of terms, this will not affect the presence of 6 sheep on Dixie Avenue. That is under this ordinance. We won't go back and go retroactive on this thing. That will be dealt with. If it has to be if it becomes any kind of nuisance, if there's a smell issue, then we'll talk about it then.
Sure.
And there will be adjustments made.
Yes.
If I may, I'm a little concerned. My question then would be, is this an isolated incident that we're dealing with sheep on Dixie, or have you experienced elsewhere in the city where this ordinance is causing a problem or being a nuisance?
This is the first time that I've run up on this.
All right. So and I understand that, and you did say, and I recognize that you've got some complaints. I'm guessing, could you count those number of complaints on one hand?
I can count them on one hand. but-
Okay.
Probably one finger.
On one finger?
Well, actually, I've received.
Maybe two. So for me, and I get it, and I respect what you're doing, I love what you're doing, go code enforcement, love what you're doing, go animal control, I'm right there to support everything. I'm a little concerned that we're looking at changing an ordinance based on one instance on 2 complaints. So, I mean, if we think about it going forward with the city, if we decide we want to jump and change in an ordinance because one person complained about one issue, that seems quite reactionary to me. And again, I respect everything you're doing, don't get me wrong, and I appreciate you, David, kind of putting this in a broader perspective as well. I just feel like it'd be interesting to see if there were other issues. My other concern is, honestly, how many people would this affect? Would this affect anybody if we did change this?
I don't think so. I think my only comment with what you said was, well, it's only happened once. When I saw the small area that was fenced and heard that there were 6 sheep, I said, our ordinance deals with that. It has to deal with that,
Right.
because anytime you're talking about livestock, you're talking about fenced area.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how much land you have, it's how much property, how much ground they have to roam on. I said, this ordinance will deal with that because it deals with, and then I saw 10-acre exception. And it doesn't work for that. So it's only happened once, but it's the one time that we needed for the ordinance to work.
I agree.
And it
Right.
didn't. And the fact that this is 11 acres and there's one property line with about 6 or 7 houses that are against that one property line, and this is where the fence
Right.
was built.
But then you did learn, though, that again, we are recognizing that the fencing as holding pen, and that the sheep are actually allowed to be and do spend quite a bit of time
Right.
on
I-
the other acres, hence the shepherd that stays with them all the time. But-
Proof will be in the
Right,
smell.
right.
It's six animals on a half acre.
Did you,
It's a matter of time.
did you notice a smell when you were over there?
This is a.
I mean, not to
No,
put you on
I
the
did
spot.
not. No, ma'am.
And I didn't either. I had just actually come in right behind you, in fact, just by happenstance.
I've actually
And-
met with people,
Uh-huh.
I went and spoke with them, and they're very nice. But I share Mr. Nunn's concern, because I'm not recommending this based on this complaint. I just reviewed the ordinance and I went, we may have a problem here because what's coming in the future?
That's right.
Well,
And that's what I'm saying.
the exception, what it leaves open is, and it may not ever happen again, but you would hate to not correct it, because I don't think it'll affect anything else. But under the 10-acre exception, someone could have 10 acres anywhere, and then they could put they could run 40 hogs if they want to
No.
prove a point.
I think they're limited to the kind of livestock that's allowed.
Well,
It is limited,
Well,
actually.
it may be.
So you can have hogs.
Well, maybe not
You're
hogs,
safe.
but I'm sorry. I
Mr.
didn't
Mayor,
read my
may I-
list. But I'll
Mayor.
see you hogs and raise your goats then.
Mr. Mayor, may I?
I just say that I think we would be, if we didn't at least deal with that, then I think it should be based on fenced acreage for the number of animals, no matter how many they have and where they are.
Yes.
It needs to get down to that. So if we can make it read that way going forward, I think we will help everybody.
I
Councilman
definitely
Maleta.
agree.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just recommend that we send everybody back to the drawing board and try to work this out somewhere before we can't solve this issue here tonight in city council. I think we're wasting the public's time, and I think we need to have, like David said, let's go back to it, Mr. Mayor, and then when we come forward, we'll be ready, because we support you, but we're going back and forth trying to solve a problem where we can't do that tonight, so.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you so much.
Can we be excused?
Yes, sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
public hearing comprehensive plan update, and just let me assure the public that there will not be a vote tonight on this. Monica is just going to give us an update as to where we are with the comprehensive plan. Monica.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time tonight. So I will just note that, just give you one time frame to look at. The county has moved their second public hearing back twice, so that's coming up again on their map. I believe that's March the 19th. I think that's right. It's a Thursday. And I would encourage you to take a look at their map.
What month? What month?
I'm sorry, I said March, didn't I? May. Yes, sir, it's a Thursday coming up, and they've got their final map ready for you to look at. So I wanted to just give you a report on where we are. We finished our planning steering committee meetings. We've gotten feedback. We've received a couple of letters from interested parties, and those have all been posted to the website so that people can view those in advance. We've also posted all the minutes from those so that people could view those. We've done a pretty strong edit on the map, and we're ready to discuss that. I'd love to showcase that a little bit with you this evening, even though you won't be voting this evening. And I've got 2 alternative dates for you that I'd like to request for a public announcement of our final public hearing and the resolution to transmit. And those are for your consideration, and as soon as we get your feedback, we would post those on the website. The first one I'd like to put up for your consideration is May the 23rd, which would be a Monday in 2 weeks. We should be finished with the final product. The thing that's missing is a narrative and the short-term work program. Short-term work program's done, it just needs final form. And so we've already received all that feedback. It's actually in the minutes, but we don't have it in final form. We want to make sure we have that for the public to view well in advance of the actual public hearing. So maybe a called meeting on May 23rd to get it adopted. That would also put us right after the county's map goes to public hearing, which means any final edits we want to make to our map based on their changes, we would be allowed to incorporate. The alternative 2 dates would be at your normal work session, which would be June the 3rd. That's not exactly public friendly because it's at 8:30 in the morning. Your other option is to push it to June the, actually 9th? 13th. I'm sorry, I always get that one wrong. So June the 13th. The concern I have with pushing it that far back is, 1, we should be ready by Friday with final documentation to post to the website, and 2, that does not give us 30 full days for the state to review it and give us feedback before June 30th. Now, do I think that's going to pop us? No, because the county's also running 2 called meetings behind as well. So if your preference is to handle it on June the 13th, that's fine, but I'd like to encourage you to consider a called date since we are so close to completion. So tonight, while y'all consider those 2 dates, tonight I'd like to take time to review for the public and for you, well in advance of your next meeting, the map changes. We're not going to make a lot of text changes. We're not proposing that. There'll be a narrative that tells what our process was and all the things that we updated. But we really didn't receive enough content feedback that there needed to be changes to the text. We do have some short-term work program add items, but given that we're only 3 years into a 10-year work program, we're really just kind of saying what we've got done so far. We're not looking for everybody to add a lot to our plate. So most of your changes that are going to the state for comment will be in map form. So tonight, I wanted to briefly review for you, Mr. Mayor, the map changes. There's also a narrative to the map changes that's online for those who want to follow along. If not, I actually made sure that y'all had a copy of it, and I've got a copy of it, so I can talk through it. We produced for the website that's been posted, the original map that we adopted 3 years ago, and then the change map. And can I ask you to go to the website and post that, please?
Is this what you want?
I want the one that has the letters that Bryce denoted on it. It kind of draws the council's attention and the public's attention to specific.
This one? Yes.
Yes. If you'll zoom in on that, I'm going to... You want this so you can tell where I'm zooming? And And I'm going to move through these. Okay, Bryce, I lied. I need yours, please. You're right. I did give my own one away. So I think that going through the map actually gives the public the most disclosure about what change we're trying to make and why. And so I wanted to kind of go through those, even though, and by the way, let me say, if you want to take public comment tonight, please do so. One of the reasons we didn't retract our date, like the county did, is because we knew people had already planned it on their calendars, and there's a lot of weirdness when you put a date on and you remove a date. So we left the date on, so please take comment if you'd like to. Again, there still will be the final public hearing and the resolution to transmit when we're getting the final product. Okay, so the first three that I want to hit, Ken, top of the map, please, the top right. So we have three that are not really changes, but are changes, which are annexations. They're annexations you've already voted on and zoning that you've already assigned. We need to assign them character areas. A1 is up by the airport, and that would be the land that you've annexed, as well as the land that was gifted to the city. Then A2 is the back end of Canaan Crossing. After receiving its federal and state tax credits, that was annexed inside the city. Far bottom, bottom center. Below I-20 on 441, you'll see A3. A3 is your annexation for the industrial subdivision, which is a continuation of Commerce Drive. You'll note that you assigned 3 specific zonings, so the 3 character areas were also assigned following that zoning pattern. One, what faces Pierce Dairy stays rural living. What connects to Commerce Drive and extends your industrial development is industrial. And then what is on frontage goes to commercial investment. That reflects the zoning pattern that the city established. None of those are changes. None of those should surprise anybody, but they just make the map because they constitute a change from the original map. Any questions about annexations? Great, thank you. Okay, Ken, C1 is interchange. Yep, perfect. Okay, so commercial. Let's talk about commercial. When the planning group, steering committee, was specifically looking at commercial, we have less than 50 acres of commercial that is undeveloped. We don't talk about the zoning districts per se. We talk about a land use category. And we're looking at what's developed, which is versus what is undeveloped. It does not matter if it could be redeveloped, okay? I want to be clear about that. We're looking at raw land versus developed already land, okay? So we are less than 50 acres. Roughly that equates to 2 lots that are on 441, one above I-20, one below I-20 that are roughly 6 acres each. And then it is roughly 45 acres that is at the base of Fairgrounds Road in its intersection with, that's Amtico. Thank you for that, Ken. That's perfect. So that being said, you have less than 50 acres where commercial investment can look at our community. So we are now done with frontage. We're out of road frontage. So where do you let commercial go? So that was part of our discussion with the Chamber of Commerce. It was part of the discussion with the hospitals. It was part of our discussion about how do you balance the tax base, because we all know residential is more demanding on services than commerce and industry. So what we did is we looked at acreage that could be added or changed to commercial. So the first one is the commercial node. Inside of C1, we have 2 developed corners and 2 undeveloped corners. The commercial node telegraphed in our last comp plan that we wanted commerce there, but we hadn't gone there yet. This time you'll see that almost everything inside the circle is telegraphed as commercial investment area. So that adds some acreage there. C2, Ken, it's on Amtico. Yes, thank you. So one of the things that Bob Hughes commented on and gave feedback on is that the acreage between Amtico and I-20, the way the land lies, it's geographically squeezed. So that makes it less desirable for industrial land, which is what we had it on the last comp plan. We had it as a character area, because normally you look at both sides of the road and include that. So in this instance, we looked at the lateral development of commercial between those 2. Now remember that we have a buffer against our interchange, so we don't strip out on frontage. None of these commerce developments would have frontage. But we specifically looked at this area as a way to add some acreage to the commerce pile, but not create a new commercial node, so it strings it between the two. You'll notice that between the truck stop, and then if you'll remember, Don Harris specifically came in with a rezoning proposal at Fairgrounds in Amtico several years ago, and the council said, yeah, maybe, but not quite yet. And so we're telegraphing to you with less than 50 acres, it's time. So C2 represents a commercial corridor along I-20. C3, this is on Fairgrounds Road, Ken, if you'll move. Yep, perfect. So this is another property that was influenced, or a couple of parcels that were influenced by the Chamber of Commerce and the industrial development feedback. This was zoned industry, where you see R2 and C3 there. I'm going to hit both of these at the same time, so I don't have to double back and talk residential in a moment. Both of these are on our current comp plan as industrial. Bob says these tracks don't work for industrial. And of course, we said why? Because they're right next to the railroad, you'd think that they would work. His answer is that this is an area that the congregate acreage impacted by the stream that is in the area doesn't work for industrial development, and its transportation arterials don't work as well either. So this is an area where we think you can extend commercial growth along Fairgrounds Road. This is all across from the
Humane Society.
Thank you, you're the winner tonight. Right across from the Humane Society, it has a couple of TK Auto, it has a daycare, the Lions Club building. So what you're seeing is a continuation from Lions Club back to the Ingalls gas station. So that's an area where we could pick up some commercial acreage, roughly about, I want to say that's roughly about 25 acres right there. And then last, this would be the C4 area. Not C4, I'm sorry, C4 on your map. Ken, that's at the hospital, old hospital. Thank you. So one of the things we're converting this time is the hospital is no longer our community service area. We're losing our community service anchor. We certainly hope that there's going to be a good backfill, but in absence of that, community service is too open-ended and invites some vagaries when the rezoning comes forward. So we're looking to telegraph that a little bit more consistently to what is currently on Ward Road and what is currently at the across from DFAX. So you'll notice that road frontage is commercial, but that behind road frontage, we've gone with R4, and then what's up against the railroad tracks is our third industrial area. I'll talk about both of the R and the I later. But all of that on the previous was a community service node that was anchored. That anchor has disappeared. So we're attributing these to character areas that are most closely oriented to what's on the ground. Doctor's offices, DFAX, nursing home, kind of a rental place, car dealership, nephrology clinic. And then behind that, single-family residential, and then what lines the railroad industrial. There is a reason why we did not change the area that lined the railroad to residential and say, hey, when it gets torn down, we want to see that rebuilt as residential. One is a lot of people don't want to back up to the railroad when they're that close to it. This is really a proximity area. Two, this area is likely to have more phase one problems because of the nature of industry that has occupied the land for so long. And then three, y'all approved a rezoning and extension of industrial use in this area, which telegraphed clearly to us that the council was committed to industry on this road. So just so you know how that got reattributed in that area. So that takes us from 50 acres of open commercial with those 4 changes to 155 acres. This is not something we've done in the past where we've telegraphed how much open acreage you have for development, but we thought that this would be important, especially with some of the questions Councilmember Joyce was asking about utility provision. So we thought this would tie into answering those questions. Any questions about commerce and those 4 changes? Not that you can't ask at the end and wrap it all up. I'm just trying to hit them as we go. Any clarifications you might need? Okay, all right. I'm seeing a lot of head approvals there. Okay, so let's move to industry. I-1, where is that? always start bottom left. Ken's down by exit 113. Yes. Zoom out one more time. Will you zoom out one more time? Okay, thank you. So this is a pretty big change. I want to talk about why it's a big change. As we all know, there was on a comp plan or two back, we won't say which one, a mega industrial site that was south of town. First broached as a possibility for Ford, then as a possibility for a landfill right between our 113 and 114 exits. So in discussion, kind of querying the owners, what their intentions were, looking at the request we have for land, and having conversations with the Chamber of Commerce and the things they reported at comprehensive planning, we are hearing that everything right of the railroad tracks is probably going to stay industrial, but that everything left of the railroad tracks may see some zoning change or zoning request. So we examined that and said, okay, so if we are trying to alleviate residential pressure on some of our lower zoned land, how do we provide opportunities for new housing stock, but without doing that inside of the original 1 mile area? So one of those areas is outside of the zoo. Again, this is a community service area node. Now that we have special zoning on the zoo and we know exactly the definitive boundaries of the zoo, we can see the opportunity for that land to be opened up as commerce. In reality, we know that they're master planning the site, and you're going to see something that feels and looks and smells to some degree like Madison Lakes. You're going to see some commercial offerings there. This is the most likely area that we might see some single-family residential in the future. No one else is coming to us with single-family right now. This opens that possibility. And it's always really challenging when you take something out of industry and look at how that could be converted to residential and look at the impact on the tax base. But if it's not going to be commerce, and you don't want to see commerce spread down 113, and you don't want to see industry in a mega site, we only have 3 classifications, people. So probably residential. So this is a really big change, and I want y'all to think about it, chew on it, listen to your constituents. But this is an opportunity maybe to, one, court some higher-end single-family, and also to balance out industry. And I'm going to talk about the loss of it here, and then I'm going to talk about the add of it somewhere else. In this area, we also have a 100-foot buffer that is not ours, but is being protected by a conservation easement by someone else on the right-hand side of Monticello Highway. So we know that from the bubble down, there's roughly a 100-foot green space buffer that's protected in perpetuity. So we're talking about what goes behind there. The likelihood that industry crosses the railroad tracks there is not high. So we attributed it to a residential category. I-2, Ken, that is to the 114 exit, bottom right. Okay, so here's a makeup. Our lowest zoning is an ag zoning, which y'all saw the results of today. When we have residential zoning in areas behind Commerce at the end of the Ramada Lane area, we have to figure out what it's going to be. We're going to see an industrial proposal for this. So the answer was, could we make up industry here in a way that would offset the residential, that maybe 113 is a much more attractive residential exit, whereas 114, that ship has sailed. So is there an opportunity to gain commercial or industrial behind that? So in this instance, we mapped another, I think this is roughly 75 to 80 acres, I don't have it off the top of my head, as industrial as an exchange. So it basically moved from one interchange to the other, and that is the I-2 change. Again, that would be abutting Hanover, which I've already discussed. And that is, we know that when y'all extended industry in that area and let them expand, we knew that that was going to stay industry for the near future. So This takes us to roughly 565 industrial acres. You're asking me why that's so heavy in your mind compared to our other categories, and that is because if you look at Monticello Road, Ken, if you'll zoom in on exit 113 and above that, the Haynes Farm and a couple of lots off road frontage on Monticello Highway make up the bulk of our industrial tracts. And 2 of those are owned by folks that are headed with industry with them, and we have room for large lot development. Remember that industry as a whole is going to take up bigger acreage, and that allows an opportunity for job growth. So we don't feel like we've deplenished industrial development acreage, because we are expecting some annexation behind the Haynes Farm, and we're seeing that there's going to be future industrial development along Indian Creek, which is below I-20. But that's probably going to be small lot development, 3,000 to 6,000 square foot buildings, but it's already zoned for it. So those 2 areas I just discussed have a bulk of acreage in them for industry already, but we're not proposing any change for those. Any questions about industry? Industry actually has the smallest tweaks, other than the giving up to residential. Questions? Okay. Residential character areas. All right, so this is the big elephant in the room, and this is the thing that led to the most discussion. I'm going to start with talking about where our existing residential zones are that we haven't changed, that are experiencing significant interest right now. We all know that there's a demand for housing. I went to a recent conference where everybody's saying they're just driving out from Atlanta as far as they can get so they can afford it, and it's 200 townhouses. That's what everybody wants. Well, luckily, our zoning caps that and pulls it down. You can't get much more than 60 units out of us, and they know that they need to move on down the road if they're looking for that. But you have to do some extras to get to 60, right? That being said, we have 2 primary tracts that are zoned residential. One is the Pritchard Farm. We used to call them the Big Ps, Pritchard, Pryor, Pennington, okay? So the Pritchard tract inside the city is 180 acres. There is a lot of concern by our residents about the development of the Pritchard tract. It is the only tract that we think would probably go single family, large lot. It's also the only one, it's zoned our largest, which is rural living, and under the county, you can use rural living roughly 2 acres, and under some circumstances, you can get down to 3/4 of an acre. So our closest zone, if we were asked to bring land in, is going to be 2 acres to 0.75. I don't think that's where we want to see our future residential growth. So we've telegraphed it in other areas, and I'd be happy to answer questions about that, but I wanted to go over the 2 acreages that we think are static. So we think the Pritchard land ought to remain static, at least for the next comp plan. The Pennington land, the bulk of it is inside the county, just like the Pritchard Farm. Pritchard Farm, 180 inside, let's call it 1,200 plus outside. Same with the Penningtons. They've got a little bit in and a whole lot out, up to the bypass. This is an area where we are seeing that with the loss of Miss Pennington, that the family is going to break up the land. They've already commented on that. Whether they will develop anything where their homes are is not likely. But there are 2 areas that will experience some pressure or some interest in redevelopment, because we're already seeing those interested things. One is the up high by Skyline Drive. So that is actually R3 on your map. I skipped R2, I'll come back to it. Okay, so there is a possibility here for R3 for a continuation of a modest lot size, half-acre lot, where you could do some continuation of Maxey's or Skyline. I'm trying to give you an example of somebody who lives in the area. A Georgiana Tamplin house and lot, right? This is modest middle-class housing. If they decided they wanted to extend this area, this is an area that we might see that kind of development in. This is not an area where we would want to see multifamily, but we would want to see a continuation of the type of development we see on Skyline, Crawford, Williams, Park. You'll notice that Cox Road, that little bitty tab that hangs down, on our previous comp plan, that was commercial. We're hoping that you'll see them If they were to entertain redevelopment, we'd like to see that all be residential, single-family, because it backs up to the back end of some historic lots that are on the frontage in Brown. So I think that answers the middle-class housing option we were looking for. Go to R2, Ken. So R2 is the backside, it's Fairgrounds Road right there. R2 is the backside of the industrial tract we thought wouldn't work. I just want to be clear. That would give us an opportunity, if it is far enough from our existing multifamily, that gives you an opportunity for townhouses, or it gives you an opportunity for apartments, or it gives you an opportunity for congregate congregate multifamily. But again, it keeps it outside the 1 mile circle, which is one of the comments we heard from some of our folks that provided written comments. So we tried to look for areas where it might be more acceptable, where it's near a daycare, it's near green space, and it's near an arterial. So we looked at the back side of that. Can go back to R3, up by the old hospital. Won't retalk it, just want to, I know, R4, sorry. Just want to reiterate, those are already developed single-family dwellings, but we have to assign it a color, so it got assigned yellow. Okay, let's see. I think that's it. There's only 4 for residential. So I want to briefly kind of go back and hit residential for a moment and say, we started off with more than 300 acres of residential. But it's residential. We have a lot of people who say they don't want it to develop. So if you don't want your existing residential development and you don't want to be no growth, you have to telegraph where you would entertain residential options. We believe we've done that in a way that is balanced. It gives the opportunity for some single family, it gives some opportunity for some multifamily, and it gives some opportunity for a little bit of mixture of both. So happy to answer any questions. Residential is the big change on this map. Residential is the big change on this map. Oh yeah, I'm gonna come back to that. I just want to be clear that what we're trying to do is depressurize the existing residential tracts and disperse any form of request for multifamily. Remember that your multifamily ordinance already requires dispersal. It has to be a certain distance from any other multifamily, but if you have nothing telegraphed as open character area for residential, it pushes it back to the existing residential. All right, I know y'all got questions about that.
I have a question about R2, just real quick.
Okay,
Like down
the
off
R2
the
change.
railroad track. So there doesn't seem, I mean, how do you achieve access?
It would go through frontage. It'll have frontage on Fairgrounds. They'll have a driveway. This does not, character area maps do not relate directly to parcel, and they don't talk about access or non-access. They're supposed to be broad, sweeping areas.
Exactly, right, I understand
Right.
that.
So they would access off of Fairgrounds.
And some of this that you're showing when we're looking at the different Rs, R2, R3, R4 and such. and
Those are
some-
not zoning classifications, just to
No,
be
I
clear.
no, I absolutely understand. I'm just saying, if, I feel like there is, like, for example, in R4, there's probably not really any, maybe 1 or 2 buildable lots in that entire spot. I mean, are you already looking kind of at, I know you have in your mind whether it goes with the comp plan or not, sort of what.
Right, we looked at the character, so a character area should be either set by what's already there or what you want to be there.
I got you.
So the
Sure.
R4's change is set by what's already there.
Right, got you. No, very good. Thank you so much, thanks.
You're welcome.
Looks good.
I knew you had a question.
So when you consider that this year, we're going to have maybe 250 more residents at Cannon Crossing as Madison citizens. And next year or the year after, we're going to probably have another 200, 250 at the new development, Carmichael Commons, that we approved tonight. Does knowing those two kind of large increases in population, does that have an effect on how you look at the comp plan going forward, for residential in particular?
It has something to do with how you look at rezoning activity. It does not necessarily have a direct correlation to how you plan with your character area mapping. We're telegraphing the next 10 years. We're not telegraphing the pace of rezoning. So that pace of rezoning is set by council consideration of what you saw tonight. You might have decided that, and it'll be a skipped year between those 200, by the way. You might have decided that when WODA proposed tonight that 24 months out was too quick for more workforce housing, and you could have declined that despite what you saw on the table. So this does not dictate pace, it dictates where, and where we might entertain change. Now, to some extent, if you don't change anything, you're inviting whatever is currently on the map. So the area around the interchange, 113, if we left it industrial, that doesn't mean we couldn't have a rezone for residential that came forward. It doesn't require it to not come forward, but you decide the pace. But if you're wanting to telegraph that the opportunity below the interchange is there for residential, then this is a moment in time where you can do that. If you're not ready to telegraph that, you wait till the next comp plan. So yes and no. It does telegraph, but we think that you need to depressurize the Pritchard tract, just based on comments and concerns. I'm not saying that I think that all those concerns are valid, but I am saying that we have to telegraph some other commercial acreage, other residential acreage if you want to pull that pressure off. One thing about residential that I did not touch on, that Councilmember Joyce did touch on tonight, which I thought was an astute point, so I'm going to bring that up. The land behind the hospital is where everybody's looking. Okay, it can only be so many things. Only so many people can buy back there. But because you approved something tonight, the next multifamily congregate acreage proposed has to be 2,000 feet from that one. So by its very nature, it will push some of that to the edge of that tract. So we're not even sure if there could be another one on that tract. But the primary acreage that's being looked at right now is behind the hospital and the Pritchard land, because no one else has anything open zoned or even in the comp plan for potential residential.
Since you just left the old hospital character area 4, then you're talking about the new hospital, the area behind the new hospital.
Yeah, I'm sorry, yes, the area behind the new hospital.
My mind immediately went to the hospital as being...
Yeah, sorry about that.
It's the tract, a part of which we just did today.
Right. If you'll notice, one of the things that we were specifically discussing about the old hospital site is we were pretty sure we didn't want it considered for residential lodging or extended stay residential. So you'll notice that it received, the frontage received commercial, whereas behind it is single family, because we anticipate that there's an economic development, a community development activity that would be more welcome to the city based on recent decisions than any form of residency, extended residency. Leave it at that. Okay. Any other questions about residential? Believe it or not, that was me being brief. I'm sorry. Okay. I'm going to talk briefly about what's outside the county, or around the city perimeter, and then I will close. So again, the county has pushed back their map review, but it is now available on their website. We saw a couple of changes that they made changes that are actually city-friendly changes. So nothing I'm saying tonight is a critique of the county plan. Again, I think it might have more on it than we wanted to see the last time. So I'm going to kind of talk about that. So there are 4 bullet points that are posted to the website, and I'll just briefly hit those. In general, when you look at Main Street forms the ridge line. So what's above the ridge line is in one groundwater recharge area, and what is below the ridge line is in another groundwater recharge area. Certainly that is a cause for concern if the Pritchard Farm develops under the county's rural ordinances, which allows you to go septic. So therefore, we don't want to see a lot of septic north of the city. So any form of density add in that arc between the railroad tracks along Dixie, okay, let's do the railroad tracks, all the way up to 1 Mile Branch. We really don't want to see that have yellow on it. So the county has some areas on their map that has yellow. We downgraded them, we put green on our map. Does that mean that the county has to follow our map? Absolutely not. But what it does is it telegraphs to developers who are asking for annexation what we might tolerate, what we might serve. Okay? So you'll notice that everything below 1 Mile Branch, all the way over to, okay, I'm now officially old, Boones Bridge Road. You'll notice that most of that is yellow. There is a big community service hub. That is the landfill, the county, thank you, County Agricultural Center. So that area is yellow. We're not suggesting a big change in that. With few exceptions, that yellow, which is a telegraphed higher density than the green, wraps down to I-20, down the right side of the city. That is primarily because our bypass rotates that side. If we ever saw transportation where we had the relief of a bypass to the north, you would see the county put yellow on our north side. That makes sense, right? But right now, with the bypass only relieving traffic on our lower southeastern side, therefore yellow is all the way to the interchange there. We made very few changes in that, except David had some concerns about extensions down Bethany, getting any higher density, so we made sure that we kept that green if there was any change there. The commercial investment on 441 South, Ken, will you zoom in that area? So you'll notice that the county telegraphed everything along 441 to also be commercial. We're expecting that. Everything between us and Madison Lakes was commercial in the last comp plan. We're not telegraphing any change in that. But beyond that, on the back sides, they had used a classification called, Bryce, what was it called?
Initially it was mixed use, I believe.
Mixed use. It had a tag as a special use district. All that's lovely, but what that means is it's some PUD we haven't seen and we don't know what it is. And we don't know what that mixed use could be. That's a little too vague for us, so we went with yellow. Yellow takes it down to a denser subdivision like Cedar Lakes, but it doesn't telegraph that we would necessarily be open-ended to a mixed-use development that we haven't seen and we don't know anything about. They may be further defining that character area classification, but until that time, at the time we did this, we went ahead and made it yellow. Let's see, and you'll notice that that goes from Pierce Dairy to the South Sugar Creek watershed. We did not extend that any further, but it does follow their development pattern for Madison Lakes and the density that they've already allowed in that area. And then counterclockwise to the, from Pierce Dairy over, you will notice that we telegraph for all of that outside of the small portions that we believe that will go to the zoo, that are already in the zoo zoning, and the industrial area has shrunken so much since 2 comp plans ago. And you'll notice that that follows the 4 Mile Branch watershed and the railroad tracks. So there's no longer this huge upside down mountain at the base of the city in between 113 and 114. And that was the county's proactivity. Their map actually reflects that, so we picked up on some of that. So just to reiterate, none of our changes substantially disagree with what the county's put on their map. There may be some areas that they have yellow, which are higher density subdivision, as opposed to their rural development. And we have, maybe we've telegraphed a little bit that they might want a little too much density in the areas where we think our groundwater recharge area might be sensitive to that. I think that's all I have tonight. Again, what we'll be working on till Friday is the short-term work program and just a one-sheet cover narrative that talks about when we held our public hearings, what the comp plan contribution was, what all the attachments are, and then it'll be posted to the website on Friday. And we hope you'll entertain a called meeting, if possible, to be able to get our last public hearing in and our resolution to transmit. And I appreciate your attention because I know that was a slug. But if you'd like to take any comments, we'd be happy to take notes on those. And again, this is our draft final map, but you know how that works. It's never the final map until y'all approve it.
Thanks, Monica.
My pleasure. Thank you
Great
for your
report.
time.
Appreciate that.
Those 2 dates, one's a Monday, and then one is your next regular meeting.
Okay, thank you. Are there any comments from the public? If not, we will move forward. Yes.
Bryce reminded me again, and I forgot to mention it, the future cemetery area was added as a service, community service area, because it serves the regional and larger city and county area. It's the one blue that got added, and I didn't point to that. But, okay.
Thanks, Monica. David Bell Park Agreement, City Manager, you have that?
Mr. Mayor, did you open the public hearing? This is in this?
Yes, he
He
did.
asked for
Okay.
public
Don't
comment.
believe
Okay,
there were
sorry.
any comments.
Must've been right.
I think
If I may, I didn't understand, I was beginning, I think Monica said you didn't have to take public comment, or you wanted to take public.
I mean, we can if you got some comments that you
I-
would like to share with us.
yes,
I'll be very brief.
If you would come up to the podium.
yes, please.
I put most things in writing to you today, but there are a couple of things, especially given some of the things that have come up earlier tonight that I'd like to comment on. First of all, I want to quote to you something from the 2017 comp plan that says, community leaders recognize the potential for continued success and support healthy, balanced growth, but do not seek growth that compromises quality of life, heritage, and natural beauty, indicating that the balancing of quality of life factors with smart growth benefits should be a primary focus of city leadership. And I worry that we are in a position right now with so much going on in our region that we're forgetting that smart growth and balancing quality of life. I am not anti-growth, and I recognize that we do have tremendous pressure for workforce housing. I made no comment when the proposal was made earlier for Carmichael Commons. That is the kind of housing that we have a current desperate need for. But what I am concerned about is creating additional needs in the future without adequately planning for them. When I mention traffic, I get the sort of general 441 DOT controls that. We don't have anything to do with that. We can't control it. Just, set it aside. And that's not the only way in which traffic impacts the quality of life in Madison. I've got 4 grandchildren in public school here. Have any of you been over to the schools and in the afternoons? Traffic backs up on East Avenue with people trying to turn into the elementary school to pick up students there for blocks. It blocks people being able to turn out onto East Avenue or even to get to the bypass. You sit there and wait forever to even get to the bypass from East Avenue. We need to consider and have a plan to deal with those issues before we start approving a lot of additional growth. Kingston doesn't have anything to do with the city, but it's 750 housing units. And if you think those people aren't going to clog up that school area even more than it is now, that is something we have got to look at when we're talking about things that are going on all around us. Rivian is going to put tremendous pressure on the city, and we've got to be smart about what we do. If there is a current need, like Carmichael Commons and that workforce housing, great, move right ahead. But I still urge a moratorium on additional development until we really figure out where we want to be. And that doesn't make Madison an outlier. Monroe's done it, the county's done it, Social Circle's done it. It does not make us an outlier. In fact, it puts us in the norm of these communities that are really looking at what they want to do in the future. I would encourage the mayor and council to hold some sort of listening tours, to go meet communities, meet citizens in their communities. I guarantee you, if you properly advertise, not just with a notice on the website or an ad in the newspaper, but flyers in the local community, you'd be amazed at the people that would show up at the Gilmore House to talk about things going on in their neighborhood, or you know, lots of places around town that you could do that. And then you would really find out what residents want in terms of how much growth and where that growth should be. And I understand we have to put it on maps, but to put a great big residential area near the zoo like we just saw, with the idea that that's the one place we can attract higher income residents, we're not planning for it. We just have to think about how that kind of development is going to impact the city as a whole. And I don't know that we're doing that in this comprehensive plan update. It seems to me that the planning is in very broad strokes and not really at a granular level like it needs to be. And I'm going to sit down. I'm not going to take up any more of your time right now, but I just urge you to think about it in terms of the unintended consequences of this development on the character of the community and the quality of life here. Because I truly believe that the city of Madison is standing at a crossroads like the city has not seen in 100 years, with so much development, with the widening of 441 and it being a freight corridor, with Rivian, with other things happening, with that pressure from Atlanta, people moving out this way, and we got to get it right. Just have to get it right, and that's going to take thinking in sort of granular terms about how we handle increased density, how we handle increased population growth, how we handle traffic. And I just urge you to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Murray.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I appreciate the comments, thank you. Having lived on Skyline Drive before, but now living in Madison or Cedar Lakes, I can attest to traffic. However, I do think that the school board and the county has done some significant things to reduce that flow. Elementary school now funnels them all the way back around, gets them off the road. The county added that lane on the right-hand side. It used to be I'd come out of Cedar Lakes, and just like you said, but after the first week of school, I can come out at 7:30. Or 7 o'clock. I don't have any. That traffic is not there. So I think they have done some planning on East Avenue. I think that's helped. I think with being able to get off the bypass, and some people are coming that way, and I have definitely seen an improvement, and I'm very happy with it.
I will not disagree with you on that. I have seen a tremendous improvement in it over just the years I've lived here and the years I've had children in the school system, or grandchildren in the school system. But if we're talking about 750 additional housing units at Kingston, we're talking about 60 additional housing units at Carmichael Commons. That's going to create more pressure, and we've got to plan for that additional pressure.
Are there any more comments?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, ma'am?
Sure.
And you were also talking, Cecilia, about, and thank you for all of your comments. You were talking about getting together with, in districts and having town meetings, and we usually do have town meetings. We haven't had one in a while because of the pandemic. But the last one that was in my district was actually in the Gilmore House, and we talked about housing. So we've actually answered some of the the request that the citizens had over in that area. Needing more housing was one of the biggest things that we needed. It's not much workforce housing in our city. So, and I do, go ahead.
I do recognize that as a current desperate need.
Yes. Yeah, so we plan for that. What we're doing about workforce housing is actually good, but we have had meetings, and I'm sure we're gonna have more town halls since we're kind of opening back up now. So, thank you.
You know, a couple of weeks ago, I was at the District 5 GMA listening session, and they gave us the opportunity to make suggestions for what laws the GMA might bring to Atlanta to get passed by the legislature. And the one I brought up was to give cities more control over, if they have a bypass, more control to force trucks to use the damn thing. And because I was kind of disappointed when we had a presentation by GDOT that you can't do that. That cities can't prevent trucks, even with a bypass in place, from coming down Main Street the entire length, if that's what they want. So my suggestion was if they look at that and maybe help cities out and give us a little bit more control over these situations where we do have a bypass, and maybe make it for local delivery trucks only. So I doubt that will go anywhere, but we planted the seed.
Always try.
Yeah, the seed is planted. I do, Mr. Mayor, may I would speak about traffic as well? Because since I've been on council, I think we've had GDOT here at least 4 times in my 9 years of being on council. And we're local, so once we call GDOT in and they tell us what we can and can't do, I'm sure we can go out and maybe push the issue more. But we're doing exactly what we can do right now. Our hands are tied unless GDOT comes down and give us a release. So we are working on that. We've been working on that since I've been on council. We're not just sitting with our hands tied. We've had them to come in, I would say 4 times in my 9 years, at least 4 times in this room. And GDOT spoke and told us exactly what we could and couldn't do. So, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Sure. If you would give us your name.
Age and occupation. Okay. Annie Hunt Burris, 912 Dixie Avenue. I would like to build off of what Councilman Joyce just said. Years ago, 40-something years ago, I worked for DOT, and I was on the commissioner's staff, chief of policy planning, when they made it where the downtown connector of Interstate 85 and 75 could not have trucks except they were local deliveries. So they were blocked as part of that freeing the freeways. There are ways around working with DOT. You have to do it with your state representative and your state senator at your side to do it. But I'm personally very pleased to see that we've got speed, I don't know what you call them.
Tell you how fast you're going?
Yeah, tell you, yeah. You know, very technical term there, yeah. How fast are you going? But that seems to bring some cognizance of what's going on. I don't know how much it's really improved on Dixie. I don't know how much you're tracking that or how much you can track it. But I'd like to compliment you on doing that. But there are ways that you can do that in concert with the state DOT. And oh, you also need your 10th Congressional District Board member as part of that. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Burris.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your comments. Are there any more comments? If not, our comment session is closed. And David, if you would talk about Bell Park agreement with the city manager and the Masters family.
I
Monica?
gave that
Okay.
one up and signed it to Monica.
So we have reached a solution with the Massey's, and mid-part of last week, we switched from a recommendation of a lease agreement to an easement, and it would be an access easement. So the area hasn't changed from the plan that you saw. Since then, the Massey's have met with the Green Space Board. The planting chairman has met on site to determine vegetation. The Massey's have agreed to mitigate visibility of the parking, and the manager has allowed staff to call legal and ask for an easement agreement. He said that I could ask you tonight if you would approve that easement agreement subject to form by the city attorney. We were using the lease agreement that we had for Lissalot Johnson for the rental of parking. This would only be for an access driveway across city property. And so it would be an easement to allow access. And so since y'all have seen that map previously, that would be attached, the map you've already reviewed would be attached to the easement agreement. But I'm sorry, we didn't have time between 2 to 3 days to get Jimmy to change from a lease to an easement. And I hope that you will consider that for the Massey's forward movement.
I think we've talked about this in the past, that we can approve this this agreement for the Bell Park.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the Bell Park agreement to reflect the lease.
No, it's
Excuse me.
Easement.
Excuse me, the easement.
To reflect the easement subject to legal form. It's the normal easement we use for the city.
So is all the documentation then the same, other than the fact that we're going from a lease to a easement? I mean, all the maps of the trees and the
Yes,
parking
sir.
lot?
All the diagram is the same. The magnolia that Chris Lambert planted is staying. Everything's copacetic. Same documentation you've previously reviewed.
I second that motion.
There any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Those of none, vote unanimously. You can move forward, Monica, with that. Unfinished business, new business. District 5 ballot, we have a ballot package tonight. Councilmember Joyce has been nominated to serve as the 3rd Vice President of the 5th District, and we need to vote on that ballot tonight, vote on him tonight.
Can we have a secret ballot there?
There will be no secret ballot. I'm watching like a hawk.
I'm very impressed, Mr. Mayor. May I?
Sure.
Well, he gave me $50 to vote, so I don't know what you got.
I didn't get anything. But no, Eric, I just wanted to say, it's pretty impressive. You're the only council person. Everybody else I see, aren't they mayors?
Mm-hmm.
We're good.
Thank you.
You impressed me. Thank you.
Thank you.
So it would,
Form of a motion?
it would be a motion to approve the District 5 ballot as presented.
As presented. I move to approve the District 5 ballot as presented.
Second.
Are there any more discussion? All in favor, show of hands. Opposers, none, vote unanimously. Congratulations, Eric.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you all.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Will you sign this for us? Because there's only one person, right?
Yes.
So
The mayor signs.
The mayor signs it? Okay. I figured that
Back
would
with
be. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yeah, you don't get to write in your name, Adam.
No, I mean, we had that one person.
David Lemag, 2022 bid tabulation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's be pretty quick. I'll keep my seat here if it's okay.
Sure.
We have 3 bids, Garrett Paving, East Coast Grading, Pittman Construction, sort of the usual suspects. And I thank them for their bids. East Coast Grading, who did our paving, our LMIG paving just recently, just a few weeks ago, because they kind of got behind and we got it done within the season. They were low at $403,497.60. That's just under 2 miles of resurfacing. It includes, other than the resurfacing of the street, it includes some edge milling where there are curbs in streets. It also includes some it's on areas that the base or the street is failing, it's called alligator cracking, where we need to, they will put down a layer of, it's almost sand and asphalt. It's a thin, it's not a thin layer, but it allows the tar to get down into the cracks. It seals that and makes a much better final coat. We tried that on several streets. We did it as a change this last year, and got it in. But we included some quantities in this bid. That's the reason this bid is a little bit higher than last year, plus the fact that asphalt is gone up in price as it's got a lot of petroleum products in it. So I'm asking that the bid be approved for East Coast grading, $403,497.60. You'll get another shot at it, as I will need to put together the construction agreement for that amount with East Coast. And I spoke to the owner of the company today. I was out walking and saw him in the street and congratulated him and said that I would like to get this done a lot quicker this time and not let it get until next year. So as long as Karen says we have the money, then we'll get it done pretty quickly. And splost, maybe some splost match, and then T-splost predominantly is where this is coming from. And again, our state money, our LMIG money from the state is about between $65,000 and $70,000 per year. So you see it's not a huge amount, because that amount doesn't go up. It just is dependent on road miles, but our splost and T-splost is strong, so we have the money to do this. I'll answer any questions.
No questions? Can we get a motion to approve this bid?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Second.
There no more discussion. All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimous.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hope to have this ready for your next work session, and then you can, if you see fit, to approve the final contract at your regular meeting.
Thank you, sir.
Next regular meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monica, you're here.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I know I'm the show, it seems like. I want to say thank you for letting Mayor let me push this back. First vacation in 4 years, I actually went to the beach on Friday, so I was not here for your work session. So I want to briefly just kind of give you a synopsis. First of all, I just want to call out Karen Robertson and say that she shamed me by putting together a presentation. So now you're going to see presentation form instead of a written format, because hers looked so pretty and beautiful. So I've added color to it this time. But remember that my department's the data wonk, so you don't get lots of pretty pictures. You are going to receive data. So briefly, I want to talk about building and construction permits in brief, and I think this is a little bit of an indicator for some of our comp plan discussions. The first is, I'll give you an indication of annual review. At the end of last year, we had reviewed 83 set of plans. We issued 349 building permits with a rough value of $33 million. Yes, we took in enough building permit fees to pay the building permit tech, our building official, and our engineer to review plans. So and then some. So we did okay, which is a good thing, and Karen's very happy with us. I want to point out that the only permits for residential, which I always get asked how many new starts, we had 24 new starts last year. So everybody who thinks there's a wash of single-family construction, there's not, and that reflects both multifamily and single-family last year. We issued 24 building permits. Okay, so far, I'm going to try to do this at least once a quarter so you can kind of watch the trends. So far for the first quarter, we've done 19 plan reviews, 82 building permits, that's roughly $6 million in valuation, and we've only reviewed 2 single-family units. So we're seeing a downturn in residential single-family new starts, and we're seeing a downturn in valuation of commercial as well. So it'll be interesting to see at the 6-month mark what that looks like. And I'm happy to answer your questions as we go. If you see something of interest, I know Rick likes numbers, so if you see something, ask. We've also shifted to reporting to the census annually, or monthly instead of annually, on all residential construction because the government's tracking it a little harder right now. And our operational indicators were turned in for the budget. So if you want to know how many COAs or permits that Ken actually works on, Karen has those numbers in your budget book. Things that we have worked on over the last 3 months. In terms of environmental compliance, we kind of got tagged a little bit. And I just want to say that, Ken's going to call me Ann Huff. Hang on.
Yeah, I was.
I know you were. Okay. So I forgot to advance my slides. Okay. So in terms of environmental compliance, Regular reporting is something that the county was doing, but when we took it over, no one kind of educated us on the environmental compliance standard reporting that we should have been doing. Bryce is now doing that on a regular basis, and he's doing a great job. There are now procedural checks and balance in place for soil erosion and sedimentation checks that we are making sure that we meet EPD's requirements. And then we have enhanced code enforcement. If you do not know, Philip has received his red card, David, do I have that right? Red card, he had a blue card, now he has a red card. It means he has a higher degree of capacity to do local inspection. The reason that's important is because before, Safe Built came down when we had a problem with runoff. And now Philip can actually respond quicker. He can respond the day it's raining. He can go take pictures, and he makes great reports to David on a regular basis. So I want to brag on Philip a little bit. Both he and Bryce have gotten us into compliance, and we're seeing that function a little bit better. In terms of zoning actions, it's been a low quarter, one text amendment, one map amendment, one conditional use, no variances. So 3 zoning actions to date. Subdivision review, so at any given time, you kind of want to know where the lot splits are happening. I'm going to try to report at least quarterly. Veranda Park is now in, they're doing a preliminary replat of Phase 2, and the reason they're having to do that is their survey was a little off. So don't worry, they're not going to gain any lots. They might move them around a little bit, or they might actually lose a few lots. But we're still expecting the same preliminary plat not to change that much. Commerce Park 2, this is an industrial subdivision. That's the one you annexed. In terms of green space and housing, I always put them on the same page because you're looking to have open space when you have development. So these are the things the green space has accomplished in the last 3 months. They did a trail opening, Arbor Day celebration, the neighborhood park, the playground opening, and the horse branch easements that we discussed at your last meeting. So they've made great headway in the last 3 months. In terms of housing, we're trying to get our housing team back up to meeting a little bit more regularly. We have at least one person who was not getting emails, and we've solved that problem, Carrie. I'll make sure that you know who that is. We have the first workforce housing unit coming online hopefully at the end of June. They are running slightly behind because of electrical parts in the supply chain that they needed. And then, which I believe they spoke to at the planning and zoning meeting the other night. And then we have 3 missing middle models that we worked on heavily about 3 years ago. The drawings will be ready this year. And the gig, I'm sorry. So missing middle is a concept used by planners. There's lots of articles I can provide to you on it. But what it means is there is a huge gap between multifamily high density that you might see on the Beltline or that you might see in a more metropolitan area, and the single-family traditional large lot development that characterize the 50s, 60s, and 70s. That the missing middle is where the opportunity for housing really is in the country, and it's what is...
Duplexes and...
It could be also creative complexes. It could be low-density multifamily, or actually high-density but small lot multifamily. Our apartment houses were a version of that, where we had 4 behind the door in the historic district. That was one of the models that, actually it's still in the books, you can still do that. A mixture of ADUs, which are accessory dwelling units, is the big trend. Not everything needs to be a 200-unit townhouse development, and not everything, now the market is not single family. And so starter housing, small house development, duplexes, quadplexes, mixture of alternative housing units, and small pockets of density instead of big pockets of density. Missing middle. If you want research on that, let me know and I'll send you some links. It's a good read. There are those who have ongoing education about that we have to do. And then tonight, thank you for endorsing the GIC endorsed project. That was very necessary, and I'm very grateful. We will not see another development inside the city that's a Lightsey development for 6 years, because once they come, they can't come back for 6 more years. That's pretty much precluded by their point system. The only reason we're seeing that is because that one was awarded in the county, and now we're having a city one. So in terms of design, historic preservation, and corridor management, we are going to see the return of the Ice Cream Social Thursday, so I'm going to put it on your calendars. Pay attention. Ken and his lovely bride are going to make ice cream for everybody. And he has also finished the 5 downtown business sidebars, so we'll see those get ordered. Public Arts was at Madison Fest and had an awareness tent, and they also have their second little gallery coming online. Also, when I was talking about your different boards, the cemetery board has almost finished full collection of obits for Madison Memorial, which is 1/4 of your obituaries posted online. And they've had several cleanup efforts. In terms of the comprehensive plan, you've already heard all you want to hear about that tonight, but this just recounts that on one slide. And yes, I could have just read this slide and not given all the information to the public, but this is my summary version. What's up next for comprehensive planning? We're going to backfill the Planner 1. Jordan left us 3 weeks ago, so we've been doing Planner 1, Planning Director, and Comp Planning all at the same time. But we'll backfill that position, so we're looking forward to that. We've got some land use policy updates that you're going to see probably next month. One is going to be about lot coverage regulations for industrial areas. 2, we're going to see an amendment about care establishments that legal has recommended, and we're working on that now. And then the last one is going to be the subdivision regulations update, and that draft will include looking at street trees, capacity of a subdivision, at what point does it trigger a traffic study? Right now, there's nothing that triggers a traffic study other than a DRI. Based on some of the comments we've been hearing about traffic, we're trying to be sensitive to that. And there'll be some other things in that subdivision regulations update. We haven't had an update on subdivision regs in about 20 years. We're due. So you'll see that. David and Ken have approved the restroom model. It's going to HPC, and then y'all will see that, and then the Hill Park restrooms might actually move forward. How exciting is that? The Irwin Bark Park is in design right now. Spoke with Todd Peaster this morning. The cemetery expansion, we're getting grading quotes. Ken says he's started the preservation survey, and he'll be working on that through the next quarter. And then we have some appointed board extended education. So we're looking for, P&Z asked for a joint meeting with housing to understand minutely the housing issues. How about that, Carrie?
Oh, nice.
And then we have some Housing 101 and 102 training opportunities, and you've got 2 DDA commissioners who need educating, so we'll be sending them. In terms of community development, I promise you this is the shorter section. In terms of community development, we're currently administering 4 grants. The local facade grants that Karen talked about, so I'm not going to re-hit those. We do those jointly. The TAP-LAP grant, that is out to bid right now, and we'll see that bid come in from engineering for preliminary engineering on the design phase for the gateway connectivity of pedestrian areas. We are also starting to spend money on the CDBG project for Boys and Girls Club. And so we've expended our first funds and done 2 drawdowns to date. And you'll start seeing us put construction numbers together. You'll get briefed on that periodically because that's going to be a big project for our community. And then we are moving on to the last 3 to 4 rehabs for the CHIP. We've got about $200,000 left to spend. So you'll see that take place, and Carrie, I'll try to keep you updated on as those get awarded, who got those. Again, that's not because no one else is eligible, that's because our target area is District 1 right now. In terms of construction, David has almost finished up the public parking that's in the gateway that goes with the Bull Street warehouse. Just to give you an update, we're thinking 30 days before the liquor store moves in is what we're told, Easy Bottle. And then we're hearing a 90 to 120 days for Adrian Tree location. So we're hearing mid-September. In terms of urban renewal, over the last quarter, we've done the lease with the community garden, and we have ended the fiscal agency with them and closed out. So DDA was doing that. We have sold a lot for Habitat, a lot to Habitat for Humanity. Their transfer of 6 acres of protected green space that you approved at your last meeting. We will have at your next meeting the Downtown Urban Renewal Plan update, and then the Opportunity Zone application. I say next meeting, that's probably a meeting out from that. What you will have at your next meeting is a URP amendment, and that is to look at the residential in the Gateway. We have a property under contract, and as you remember, as we did with Silver Lakes, the amendment has to precede the sale of property. So they have to be able to, for due diligence, they want to make sure they can do what they're buying, right? So you'll see that coming up. I did the ad for that and the comp plan today. You'll see, we'll finish up this quarter with the Phase 1, which is the transfer of the middle school, Phase 1 portion. And you will see the leases to both nonprofits, and that would be to the Pearl Burney Alumni Museum and to the food pantry, get executed. Two slides on what's after that. So for the next quarter, the things that'll be controlling is we'll be closing out the due diligence period with the Tanyard Branch Living. The developer calls it the West Washington Residential, so you may see it advertised or talked about as both. There'll be a lot sales announcement in the Gateway and Pearl Street. Some of those have been advertised before. They're going to get re-advertised again. In terms of design, you are going to see both our downtown fact sheets that Karen and I are working on. We finished the one on house trees, and we're working on a couple of others. And then the business incubator and the tourism incubator over by the depot, which I know y'all have seen a little flash of the sexy stuff, but you got to have the text that goes with it, right? And the reason that's important is because it goes into our grant procurement section. So staff roughly estimates that the grant we're working on now that will be submitted on June 3rd after your work session will be roughly $1.4 million. The goal for that is to leverage up $100,000 out of our ARP funds and seek both a business and a tourism incubator and pad that with downtown lighting. Hopefully we can get all of downtown lighting in the replacement package. We'll see. You know how grants are. They are a crapshoot. And so then the next grant we'll be working on is the RDF, and that is for demolition of the triangle. Roughly $125,000 in demolition and hazmat has to occur in the triangle. That will follow post-relocation of Adrian's in the liquor store. So those are the next two grants that are up. And then in terms of administration, some of these duties will be shared with Karen, of course. We've got the two that we talked about already. One is the RLF, and that's the matching economic development money out of ARP to match our local redevelopment fund money that we're already got cash on hand. That will give us approximately $100,000 to loan to small businesses. And then, of course, Martha's favorites, or Adrian's, would be one of the first candidates for that. And then the other one is the nonprofit service grants. Those would be $15,000 to our local nonprofits, which y'all discussed. And I contacted every nonprofit today, and they were joyous and thankful and said lots of good things and thanked me. And I said, no, thank the city council. I'm just the messenger who gets to deliver good news tonight.
So that was the list that we talked about at our last meeting?
Yes, sir, it was. And so I went ahead and
started the paperwork process like we discussed?
We're working on the framework of what they'd have to turn in, how it would work, reimbursement, how Karen wants to cash flow that. But they were all told they would get a commitment letter this week. Most of them meet on the first, this Monday night. So like 4 of them told me they had meetings tonight. So it was a really timely action on y'all's part and a phone call on mine. So happy to answer any questions that I haven't addressed. I know y'all are tired of seeing me tonight. I'm sorry.
Great report.
Never get tired.
Yes.
Thanks, Monica, for all you do. Appreciate it.
Let me, Monica, so
Yes,
have
ma'am.
we, sorry, just to clarify, do we know, you had kind of floated out there when we were going to, a resolution to adopt the comp plan? Were we going to have another public hearing before the resolution to adopt?
The public hearing and the resolution are usually at the last public hearing. They're the same coterminous. I would like to recommend that be Monday, 2 weeks from now, but I know y'all have calendars and commitments. We're not expecting any public comment that's going to be substantially different than what we've already heard. So if you will review the public comments in the written record and the record from tonight, we're not hearing anything different.
Okay.
I mean, I think all the
Super.
issues are on the table. Where you want to go with it, it's up to you. The
Thank you.
resolution will be in your packet. Do y'all have a druther of a called meeting in 2 weeks? Shouldn't be more than 45 minutes.
We can schedule that if we need to. We'll get with Ashley and we'll get a schedule. We'll get the council members to find out their schedule.
Okay,
We
that
can
sounds
make it
great.
happen.
If not, June 3rd at your work session would be the next opportunity. It's not really public-friendly, but again, people can submit written comments in advance, and we did take comment tonight, but it's not my favorite. Your regular meeting would be June 13th, but that does push us well into June. Thank
We'll
you
get
for
with
your
Ashley.
time.
Thanks, Monica.
Yes, sir.
Karen?
Good evening. I don't have anything else to really add to the budget besides the presentation. And then I know we discussed last week the American Recovery Funds. And so we'll discuss those some more at the work session in June. But if y'all have any questions after the presentation or after reviewing your binder, then I'll be happy to answer.
Thanks, Karen. Has any council member came by to see you yet concerning the budget?
No, sir.
Okay. Please go by and see Karen if you have questions concerning the budget, council members.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Karen.
Wonderful.
Natural gas expansion to Boston, David?
That's so you wouldn't leave early.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Council, thank you for letting me present. This is a recommendation for awarding or accepting a bid and giving a notice of award to a bidder, the lowest qualified bidder for this project. As a reminder, the northwest expansion from 278 out to the Bostwick community and beyond, we've been at it for a little while now. We've probably installed about 3 miles of main, which for Rusty and his crews to do that with the work they're doing, they're making gas taps all the time, water taps, fixing what we have. It just got to be where he couldn't do everything. So we knew that we were going to bid the project out through the park because there were obstacles, the bore under the spillway, it's a rock bore, the railroad bore, 278, there's just a lot of things going on. So what we decided to do was to tack on what the engineer called Phase 2 onto the park area. Let's see, he called it, it was taken as an additive alternate bid, but it was the same type of work, just more project. To see how the bids come in, we wanted to bifurcate it to make sure we could afford to do at least part of it. What recommendation is tonight is to do all of this. I think this would get us way past halfway, probably 2/3. This would get us from where we are now, which is at Old Mill Road and Fairplay Road, through the parts, that's where our pipe is now. This contract does the railroad bore at Old Mill Road, does 278, it does the tie-ins, the regulator station, all of that stuff associated with that, picks it up, goes through the park, actually does one more bore that we think might be, have some rock in it at Big Sandy Creek. That's on past Fairplay Road and Riding Road area, but we tried to get it in there in case we were able to do more of the work ourselves. So both of these together, this will get us from Old Mill and Fairplay through the park all the way to Sandy Creek Road, down to Riding Road, to the first 5 poultry houses. We'll be going by a lot of houses, potential development, potential burner tips, to the first poultry farm, which is kind of where we're structuring these mains to get to. Those are going concerns. They are ready for us to be there. Yesterday, propane continues to go up. Even though natural is trending up some, it's still a bargain compared to propane. We received 5 bids, and you've got the breakdown on your sheet. The lowest bidder was Southern Utility Group, and they're a new company. They've done work in other areas. They've done some limited amount of gas work and some utility work. And they didn't have the qualifications that we needed. We didn't pre-qualify contractors. This has never come up since I've been here. But after checking through and after looking at their qualifications, we had to reject their bid. So I talked to the city attorney, I talked to the engineer. I think I sent you all out the letter that explained that. I think it was quite unprecedented. I called our contact with the company personally. I told him that I had no problem doing work with them if they got their qualifications together. They didn't have a utility contractor's license, which sort of, when I saw that, they had a general contractor's license. When I saw that when we opened the bid, it was sort of, a question mark came up. Anyway, we moved to the second low bidder, D. Lance Souther Incorporated out of Macon. Very well known, very well established contractor. His place is actually on the Gray Highway, 129. You go past it if you go to Macon that way. It's only 4% higher than the original low bid. He's coming in at $1,099,955. The engineers recommended we award it to D. Lance Souther, Inc. I'm recommending that, and if you see fit tonight to do that. And I looked at the bank account today, and we have money in the bank to do it. And we're in good shape in the gas department. This is, I think, the very best place to put the city's hard-earned money, to invest it in pipe, put it in the ground so that we won't allow our good neighbors to any side to pick off any of our territory. We don't need to play that. So the aim in this is to get this project done, and D. Lance Souther, Lance, I think, is ready to go on this. Remember, we bought the pipe. We own the pipe. It's sitting on the ground in different places. We own a lot of we bought a lot of the valves. So most of what Lance Souther's going to do is install what we already have. So we've invested significantly. We need to get it done. I also want the engineer to push ahead with the next phase to see, we know what the costs or what the bids are coming in at, so we can reasonably estimate what the next phase will be to see when we might be able to do that. So what my ask is tonight is that the council approve this bid amount for D. Lance Souther, Inc., $1,099,955, and to authorize me to sign and to send the notice of award to D. Lance Souther. I'll answer any questions you have.
So the state law allows you to reject the low bidder
Yes.
based on
Yes.
cause, and we met the cause, I guess?
Yes. The state law is very specific, and Mr. Carter sent me the section. You can't deny a bid based on experience, just purely experience. But we were confident that the people working for the company had experience, relevant experience in the work that they were doing. They had an equipment list that was mind-boggling. I mean, all the equipment they needed, they were going to do a lot of this stuff in-house, but simply the fact that their operator qualifications, which is a set of rules and regulations and qualifications that the Public Service Commission and federal law requires all of our guys to, if you do a task, you have to be trained and tested on doing that task. Turning a valve on at a meter is a task, and you have to be tested on how to do that. So you can imagine working in a gas department, how many different jobs and tasks you do, putting line in the ground, fusing pipe, turning valves, repairing leaks, squeezing off pipe, all of these things. This company didn't have all of that in place to our satisfaction. So both the red flags went up a little bit with the engineers. They started looking in, but I did call the contractor personally, our point of contact with them. He appreciated me doing that. They suspected that this was coming based on the questions that were being asked, but the recommendation from the engineer was to go to the next low. And the city attorney said that the city had that discretion with calls. So, anyway, that's where we are.
Thank you, David. Thank you for looking out the city, looking after our city.
Yeah.
We can get a motion to allow our city manager to approve this.
Yeah, Mayor, I would move to accept award the contract to D. Lance Souther in the amount of $1,099,955 for the Bostwick natural gas extension.
Second.
Are there any more? Yes, sir.
Also, just make sure that I'm authorized to sign and send the notice of award. This will be sent to the contractor with this is drawn up by the engineer.
Can you include that in your motion,
And I would amend
Councilman?
it to include that, yes.
Thank you, sir. Second.
I still a second.
All in favor, show of hands. Opposed, none, vote unanimously. Thank you.
Well, I'll say it again, I do think this, and we're looking for projects all the time, small additions. We're going into about an 18-house subdivision up between Social Circle and Jersey. That area, if you want to look at the numbers sometimes, the number of residential accounts we have that are outside of the city are continuing to grow at a little bit faster rate. But we're getting our share. The rebates that you have approved are very aggressive. Our own bill financing, which I thank Karen and her staff for administering that. When you can come to the city and if you want a replacement furnace or if you want that nice gas range in your kitchen, just go get it. We'll finance it for a little monthly fee, no interest cost, a little monthly fee. We'll include it on your utility bill.
That's very
So we're trying to do the things that will keep our gas system growing.
So
Thank you, sir.
what's the time frame, David, just as an aside?
I think it'll be within months. I think we can get this going. You guys, the mayor and council will, of course, approve the contract that the engineer puts together
Sure.
that lays out all this stuff. It'll be, for a job like this, there'll be a lot of boilerplate in it, but it will have some specifics. And that contract, the engineer will be putting together, and that'll come up at an upcoming meeting. I would think that certainly within 6 months,
Might get started.
that'll be done. No.
Oh, get it done.
Oh, that'll be done for the end of the year,
wonderful.
I suspect.
Wow.
Pretty easily.
Very good.
Maybe way before then.
Wow.
And on a side note, I think David claims that what I think are very generous rebates for buying gas appliances in the city. They've got a return on the investment. I believe you told me like 3 years. something like that.
Some are a little better than others.
That's pretty good.
Wow, that is.
A furnace will use, if we have a good cold winter, which I like, killing bugs and that everybody needs to change the seasons. And water heat is always good. But, we got new technology. We have tankless water heating. I'll invite a lot of people, well, I hope someone will invite me when the new city hall gets on. We've got a natural gas, the unit that heats and cools the building is powered by natural gas. It's a natural gas engine as opposed to electricity. So it's quite cutting edge technology, but we're generating heating and cooling using the city's own resource. So we're helping ourselves.
That's
That's
nice.
great.
That's nice.
And we're not cutting ourselves a deal.
Good.
Full price.
Thank you. Thank you, David. Great report. Are there any comments from the public tonight? If not, I would ask our council members if they would to just consider at our next work session. We normally try to, but did this in the past, give our staff a month off, maybe a council meeting for the month of July, and we give our staff that day off. But I would ask staff, if you have anything important, if try to get it on our June agenda or our work session coming up to our monthly meeting in July. And we'll give you guys July meeting off. If there's nothing else to come before this,
We get to take a week off, day off too?
huh?
Does that apply to us?
That apply to us too.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sir. If there's nothing else to come before this council, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you so
Perfect.
much.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mayor.
because
Thank
July
you.
is so beautiful, you're going to want. All right, there you have it.
That was a marathon. Oh, no, I'm not abstaining. Okay.